What happens when you have the most powerful CEOs, bankers, politicians, all involved in a story that relates to money, sex, and power? I'm predicting that the Jeffrey Epstein scandal will be the biggest story of the decade, and the names in that little black book are incredibly powerful. I worked for the creator of Entertainment Tonight, as well as Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. I want to be the next female editor at the Financial Times. I'd like to welcome John Ridding, as well as the editor-in-chief, Lionel Barber, and the head of FT Investigations, Paul Murphy. Welcome to my viewers around the globe. I'm Sandra Rupp. Thanks so much for watching. Because as it turns out, I used to get my hair done just steps from the Epstein mansion. That's right. I went to the Yossi salon. He's a wonderful man from Israel, around the corner from the Ralph Lauren store on 72nd and Madison. St. James Church is literally across the street. The Jeffrey Epstein story has attracted so much attention because of the names involved. He knew Bill Clinton. He knew Donald Trump. He knew Larry Summers. He knew Ace Greenberg. For the Financial Times audience, this is big news. But let's unravel it. Why did Leslie Wexner, the richest man in Ohio, transfer his townhouse to Jeffrey Epstein for just $1? That's the one on 71st Street between Madison and 5th. It's now worth $77 million. I feel so sad for those young women and the girls from Eastern Europe and the aspiring Victoria's Secret models who were taken advantage of by this horrible man. Bill Clinton allegedly flew 26 times on the Lolita Express. He claims 4 pilots are being subpoenaed. Why would someone go to Pedophile Island? That's what it was known as, Little St. James Island in the U.S. Virgin Islands, ironically. Larry Summers is the one who actually helped deregulate Glass-Steagall. They did predatory lending, and then they had to bail out the banks. And who got hurt? Bad behavior, whether it happens to a young woman or an older woman, scars her for the rest of her life. When I saw Bear Stearns failing, I knew something was seriously wrong and that other banks were going to follow, because the guys at Bear Stearns knew what they were doing, and apparently it was now legal to bring down banks, which is incredibly scary. It's just shocking. Linda Rothschild had a party on Nantucket, and she introduced Jeffrey Epstein to Alan Dershowitz. Alan Dershowitz is then seen at Leslie Wexner's home in Dayton, Ohio. He owns Limited Brands, which also owns Victoria's Secret. They used to own Abercrombie and Fitch. Remember all those terrible ads? Remember how Victoria's Secret models went from being mature women of supermodel status to looking younger and younger, almost girl-like? Well, I'm sure Jeffrey Epstein had something to do with it. He had taught the children of Ace Greenberg, the head of Bear Stearns. He was eventually hired by Bear Stearns, although his career there was quite short-lived. He then started up his own firm, although for a time he was also working for a man who was later accused of a Ponzi scheme. Friends with Ghislaine Maxwell. She's the daughter of Robert Maxwell. Robert Maxwell was a very rich man in London. When I said that in a Financial Times comment section, there was a lord responded to me, and he said, sounds like he might be a Mossad agent. That's the CIA for Israel. The other clue we have is that Acosta, who had to resign as labor secretary, and he said he was told that Jeffrey Epstein was intelligence and above his pay grade, and he was also supplying them to other men in his crowd. That's sex trafficking. This case came out of New York in the corruptions unit, so this is big news, and it's going to probably involve more than one person. When Jeffrey Epstein got his sweetheart deal, as they're calling it, in Florida, he was actually able to be on a work release. So he basically spent about 6 hours in the Palm Beach jail at night, and then during the day he could go to an office. Actually, women being brought to that office, so his behavior was continuing even when he was supposedly in prison. The sweetheart deal that he got was very upsetting to the victims and their families because he got charged with prostitution. So in effect, they were declaring these young virgin girls prostitutes. That would no longer happen today because the laws in Florida have been changed. But there are a lot of angry parents out there, because if he had done this as a regular man, he would have been put behind bars for a very long time. When Bradley Edwards, the attorney in Fort Lauderdale who was representing the female victims, contacted many of the influential people in the Black Book, the one person to return his call was Donald Trump. He looks a little bit like Superman, and he is a Superman because he's been working on this case for 11 years. And he said, "I will be happy to tell you what you need to know about this man." And there were not many people on the Democratic side who did that. Donald Trump actually kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago for hitting on a member's daughter. Everyone knows everyone in Palm Beach. If he was a Mossad agent, as some people are proposing, what was he doing? Well, one of the things that is very concerning about the fact that he was part of intelligence is that he then was possibly using these young girls, whether they were of age or not, and entrapping men in sexual situations. There has been a discussion that there are photographs and films of this behavior. And then he has the influence over these leaders, whether they're CEOs, bankers, politicians. If men who get into bad situations are then told what to do, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and we know that all of a sudden, when the financial crash came, there was too much predatory lending going on, both on mortgages as well as credit cards. And then who had to pay the interest on all that when the crash came? It was Main Street. It was people like you and me. But why? That's called socialism, when you bail out the banks and the bankers. There's major information about Jeffrey Epstein and currency stabilization. The more you dig into this Epstein story, the crazier it gets. When you look at who owns the Epstein mansion, which is supposedly worth $77 million, it's actually a company, Maples Inc. There is a document, Depto and Johnson, which I believe is the Epstein law firm, to the judge in New York. They were talking about the non-prosecution agreement from the case in Florida, and they also talked about how it was a global settlement for offenses. This is definitely something that you journalists at the Financial Times need to research, because in the United States, you can't have a global settlement. Okay, we are not a one world government, all right? So we don't want the power in the hands of just the global banks and the global corporations. So do your homework on that, FT boys. But we do have an amazing woman in the U.S. as well. I saw that Gillian actually is an anthropology major. I was a history major. So those humanities and liberal arts majors can add a lot of value, especially in journalism. I also got my MBA. The Financial Times broke the story on the President's Ball and what was really going on there. The Financial Times also broke some of the news about the Martin Sorrell tragedy. We do know what is going on. It is not okay that only 1% more women came to Davos last year because you didn't invite them. I even had a Davos CEO write to me that he's not sure that women need to be at Davos because it's a place to do deals. But let me tell you something. Women need to do deals at Davos because we need to get investors for our businesses, and we need to clean up Davos from predators and bad behavior and men who only want to hire millennials. Yeah. We've got a lot to say, Borge Brenda. And they continue to do what they do, and now look, we've got all these bullies on Executive Row treating women like disposable products, and it has to stop. And that's why the Me Too movement is so strong. Going forward, women in leadership are going to make sure that your voices are heard. And we are not going to allow rich men to continue to get richer and make tens of millions of dollars and hundreds of millions of dollars a year, and then have them say, oh, we should hire young people. Forget about the mature women with wisdom who saw the crash coming. No, let's get rid of all of them and replace them with young women that we can boss around and tell what to do. Oh, let's hit on those women. Oh, no, I'm going to hire a head of human resources who's young. She'll be too intimidated by a CEO, a male CEO, to say what's really going on. In fact, when I called up some of these CEOs, they didn't want an executive coach like me because I would have really told them what I thought about their bad behavior. Personally, I could never be married to a man like that, who cheats on his wife. And Borge Brenda, I'm so glad you're of my generation. Let's get more women like me at World Economic Forum. We need the management consultants and the executive coaches and the anchors and the editors and the serious women from the Financial Times. When Mark Reed took the job at WPP as CEO, his pay was much lower than Martin Sorrell. And I think that shows his humility and his respect for his employees. And they're all in this together. It's not about making hundreds of millions of dollars. Men are getting away with bad behavior, and oftentimes it happens in male-dominated environments. It's the PR sexual harassment industrial complex. You can look that up. There are people in the little black book of Epstein who are innocent. That we need to make sure that the ones who did know about the bad behavior, the predatory behavior, and the young girls, that they are held accountable. Because they should have let us know about this long ago. Because it's no longer about the people, we the people. And we need to get our power back. Let me tell the young people right now, you do not want socialism, because look what happened in Venezuela. The mothers cannot feed their children. People are being carted away. They no longer have free speech. People who talk about climate change should not be flying on private jets. In fact, Republicans recycle more than Democrats. We're going to stop paying the CEOs $1 gazillion because leadership looks like this. I look forward to that invite to the World Economic Forum, and I look forward to the CEOs who truly care about women and children who are on my side. Now I'm going to do videos about it and write about it for the Financial Times. So I'm Sandra Rupp. Thanks so much for watching. And if you'd like to add your support, you can donate at patreon.com. Please subscribe on YouTube. Thanks for watching. Love you all.